This is an AP article released April 23rd and written by Will Weissert. Weissert? Something like that. Washington, AP. President Donald Trump, who helped push the term fake news into the mainstream, now seems to have a new favorite subject. Fake math. During a Thursday event announcing a deal with drug maker Regeneron to lower the cost of its pharmaceutical products, Trump defended his past claims that prices on prescription medications had been cut by well over 100%. Something that is mathematically impossible without manufacturers dropping prices to zero and then presumably paying consumers to use their product. Yeah. I'm sorry, I had to reread that. That was astounding. Trump acknowledged having boasted that his efforts to lower drug prices had reduced what consumers pay by 500 or 600%. But he added, we also sometimes say 50 and 60%, and called it a different kind of calculation that could go up to 70, 80, and 90%. People understand that better, Trump said, but there are two ways of calculating, and either way, it doesn't make a difference. This is going to be a really interesting article. There could indeed be two ways of calculating such things, but the difference is important. One is correct, the other is non-mathematical. It was one of several times Trump used his own but incorrect math during the drug pricing event. He claimed the 7.5-week and still going Iran war actually fell within the 4 to 6 week timeline he predicted early on. The president also brought up the crowd size for his 2017 inauguration, a subject that led one-time top Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway to unwittingly make the phrase alternative facts famous. Trump's incorrect take on percentages, something he has long repeated, came just after his health chief, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., brought up the issue on his own during the same Oval Office event Thursday. Kennedy noted that he was reminded of his exchange the previous day with Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, a Democrat, at a congressional hearing when she said that claiming price cuts exceeding 100% might suggest companies should be paying you to take their drugs. Kennedy said during the hearing that Trump, quote, has a different way of calculating. On Thursday, Kennedy argued that drug manufacturers had raised prices on popular medications by more than 100%, and that Trump was then cutting the price down substantially, meaning he was wiping out percentages of costs more than 100%. That's not how you measure that, though. The percentage of 100% isn't a variable. Jesus Christ. We have a president that can't do 6th grade math. We have a president that cannot do 6th grade math. It's very special. If the drug was $100 and it raised the price to $600, that would be a 600% rise, Kennedy said. Even though that's incorrect. Oh my God. 600 is indeed 600%. of the original 100 value, but the increase from one to the other is actually only 500%. Oh my god, his whole cabinet can't do math. Oh. I can't be the only one who finds this concerning. Kennedy then continued. Oh, God. Quote, and the president used that mathematical device, end quote. But no such device exists for the way Trump characterizes it. Or at least not when math is done correctly. Something can increase in price by more than 100%. A product that increases from 1 to 210 has increased by 110%. But prices cannot be reduced by more than 100% without being pushed to a value of 0, or reduced 100% of the full price, then into negative territory, where consumers presumably would need to be paid for using the product. In a subsequent question and answer session with reporters during the price announcement event, meanwhile, Trump offered another dash of fake math for how long the Iran war, which began on February 28th, had been going on. Asked about the war having exceeded the 4 to 6 weeks he originally suggested it would last, Trump argued that he'd actually met his own timeline, because Iran's military was decimated by then. The U.S. and Iran agreed to a ceasefire this month. Trump announced this week that he was extending it. But neither side said the war is over, and a conclusion that hasn't been achieved certainly didn't occur in the 4 to 6 weeks that have already been elapsed. Trump also brought up his 2017 inaugural crowd size issue on Thursday. When talking about renovations at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, he noted that Martin Luther King Jr. had drawn hundreds of thousands of people to hit the National Mall for his I Have a Dream speech in 1963, then claimed, and I quote, I had the same, and I quote, I had the same crowd, I had the exact same crowd, maybe a little bit more, end quote. And he argued that pictures of both events backed him up. Quote, I actually had more people, Trump added. But that's okay, end quote. This was written by Will Weirsit, published by AP on April 23rd, 2026. This article was released by AP, updated on April 23rd, 2026, and written by Matthew Lee and Bassem Moreau. Washington, AP. President Donald Trump said Israel and Lebanon have agreed to extend a ceasefire between Israel and the Hezbollah militant group by 3 weeks after talks at the White House on Thursday. Trump said the meeting between the Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors to the United States, the second in the past week, went very well. But during an Oval Office gathering, he acknowledged that they do have Hezbollah to think about. The Iranian-backed group has opposed the talks, and since the initial ceasefire went into effect last Friday, there have been multiple violations by both sides. Despite that, these were the first direct diplomatic talks in decades between Israel and Lebanon, and represented a major step for neighboring countries that officially have been at war since Israel's inception in 1948. The initial 10-day ceasefire had been due to expire Monday. The United States is going to work with Lebanon in order to help protect itself from Hezbollah. Isn't Hezbollah also a political party in Lebanon? Like, they're like fully ingrained in that society. Okay. Trump said in a social media post, he added later in the Oval Office that he expects to meet in Washington with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun in the next couple of weeks. Trump told reporters, while surrounded by the ambassadors, as well as as Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that Israel has a right to defend itself, quote, if they're shot at, and they will, end quote. We hope that together, under your leadership, we can formalize peace between Israel and Lebanon in the very near future, an Israeli ambassador Yekel Leiter said. Lebanese ambassador Nada Hamadeh Mawad thanked Trump, quote, for all your effort to help and to support Lebanon. She referenced his Make America Great Again slogan when she said, I think with your help, with your support, we can make Lebanon great again. Aoun, the Lebanese president, said a day earlier that during the talks, Hamadeh would ask for an end to Israeli home demolitions in villages and towns occupied by Israel after the latest war broke down on March 2nd. Preparations were being made for wider-reaching negotiations. The aim of the future talks is to fully stop Israeli attacks, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Lebanon, release of Lebanese prisoners held in Israel, deployment of Lebanese troops along the border, and beginning of the reconstructive process, Aoun said in comments released by his office. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has called on Lebanon to work with Israel to disarm Hezbollah. Quote, we don't have any serious disagreements with Lebanon. There are a few minor border disputes that can be solved, Sa'ar said during Independence Day remarks to Israel's ambassadors and diplomatic corps. He described the neighboring country as a failed state. Quote, the obstacle to peace and normalization between the countries is one, Hezbollah, he said, adding that Lebanon could have, quote, a future of sovereignty, independence, and freedom from Iranian occupation, end quote. The latest war started when Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel, 2 days after Israel and the United States launched attacks on Iran. Israel responded with widespread bombardment of Lebanon and a ground invasion, capturing dozens of towns and villages along the border. Israel's military occupies a buffer zone stretching as far as 6 miles into southern Lebanon. Israel says it aims to remove the threat of short-range rockets and anti-tank missiles being fired toward northern Israel. Hezbollah has not been a participant in the diplomacy. Wafiq Safa, a high-ranking member of the militant group's political council, has told the Associated Press that it will not abide by any agreements made during the direct talks. The Lebanese government hopes the talks will pave the way to a permanent end to the war, while Iran has set ending the wars in Lebanon and the region as a condition for negotiations with the U.S. Lebanon insists on representing itself. While Iran has set ending wars in Lebanon and the region as a condition for negotiations with the U.S. It's a weirdly phrased sentence. Anyways, the talks last week were the first between Israel and Lebanon since 1993. Both countries have relied on indirect communication, often brokered by either the U.S. or the UNIFIL, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon. Lebanon's top political authorities, critical of Hezbollah's decision to fire rockets towards Israel on March 2nd, in solidarity with Iran, quickly proposed direct talks in a bid to stop the escalation, hoping Israel would not launch its ground invasion. Despite the ceasefire that was later reached, an Israeli strike Wednesday killed Amal Khalil, a well-known Lebanese journalist covering southern Lebanon. Lebanese health officials say the Israeli military opened fire on an ambulance that responded, preventing rescuers from reaching her. Her body was pulled from the rubble of a collapsed building several hours later. The Israeli military denied that it had deliberately targeted journalists or fired on rescuers, but the case sparked widespread anger in Lebanon ahead of the Washington talks. After a cabinet meeting Thursday, Lebanon's Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Mitri said the government is working on a report documenting alleged war crimes by Israel, and that ministers had discussed joining the International Criminal Court. The latest Israel-Hezbollah war has killed 2,300 people in Lebanon, including hundreds of women and children, and has displaced over 1 million people. Moreau, reporting from Beirut, AP writers Abby Sewell in Beirut and Emmer Madhani and Colin Binkley in Washington contributed. This article was published by AP, written by Matthew Lee and Bassem Rao, published April. Alright, this article comes from Politico, released April 23rd, and written by Gregory Svirnovsky. President Donald Trump downplayed feeling any pressure to quickly wrap up the conflict in Iran on Thursday, even as peace talks look uncertain and global gas prices remain stubbornly high. For those people, fewer in number now than ever before, that are reading the failing New York Times or watching fake news CNN, that think that I am anxious to end the war, if you would even call it that, with Iran, please be advised that I am possibly the least pressured person ever to be in this position, Trump wrote on Truth Social on Thursday. I have all the time in the world, but Iran does not. The clock is ticking. Okay, before I even read this fucking article, I just want to point out that when it comes to, time, the only way that superpowers lose wars is time. Vietnam, Korea, I wish they would put people in office that understood history and foreign policy, that's all. Trump's open-ended timeline comes as the war with Iran, which right now sees little active conflict amid a ceasefire Trump extended indefinitely earlier this week, approaches 2 months with no clear end date. At hearings on Capitol Hill on Wednesday, cabinet officials largely avoided giving timelines for when energy prices will come down, and some Republican lawmakers quietly say the 60-day mark for the conflict could be a turning point in their continued support. Central to the conflict's future is the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil travels through. As American warships embark on the time-consuming task of locating bombs in the strait and clearing it for commercial shipping, Trump calls on the U.S. Navy earlier than Thursday to shoot and kill Iranian boats still placing mines in the waterway. His statement comes amid bubbling concerns that it could take months to root out all the mines in the strait. Trump did not directly address how long it will take to clear the waterway, but urged the Navy to target any remaining boats still placing mines. Quote, "There is to be no hesitation," end quote, he wrote in an earlier social media post. Additionally, our mine sweepers are clearing the strait right now. I am hereby ordering that activity to continue, but at a tripled up level. He has the grammar of a 6-year-old. The president on Thursday extended a shaky ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, but said he'd continue an American blockade on Iranian shipping in the strait. Iran slowed traffic on the waterway to a mere trickle in the weeks after the U.S. and Israel launched a joint operation against Tehran in February. It sent oil prices skyrocketing. The U.S. blockade has strained relations even more, with Tehran now halting peace negotiations until it lifts. Asked in the Oval Office on Thursday if Americans should anticipate the ongoing conflict will keep gas prices elevated, Trump said they would be higher for a little while, but indicated any price hikes would be worth it. Quote, "You know what they get for that? Iran without a nuclear weapon," he said. For anyone over the age of 30, where have you heard that before? Further talks have not yet been scheduled, but Trump said earlier this week that it was possible that talks picked back up this weekend. Experts worry that if a vessel were damaged or destroyed by a mine in the waterway, it would only further choke off trade. The White House has taken pains to play down the threat of Iran's boats on the strait in recent days, especially after Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps seized 2 foreign vessels in the waterway on Wednesday. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt insisted the seizures did not constitute a violation of the ceasefire and said it was evidence that the U.S. military campaign was working. Quote, "And for the American media, who is sort of blowing this out of proportion to discredit the president's facts, that he has completely obliterated Iran's conventional navy, these 2 ships were taken by speedy gunboats," she said. Iran has gone from having the most lethal navy in the Middle East to now acting like a bunch of pirates. In recent weeks, Trump, too, has boasted about the effect of U.S. attacks on the state of Iran's military force. Quote, "Iran's navy is lying at the bottom of the sea. Their air force is demolished. Their anti-aircraft and radar weaponry is gone. Their leaders are no longer with us." That's maybe the nicest way he's ever put that. "The blockade is airtight and strong, and from there, it only gets worse. Time is not on their side," he wrote on Thursday. Aaron Pellish contributed to this report, which was released on April 23rd by Gregory Svirnovsky and Politico.